Welcome, friends. Nice to see you again. This is Richard from Lost Arts Radio, and Gabriel Cousens is back with us again live this week. So welcome, Gabriel, and we're going to talk about morals and courage and application to the real-world environment.
Okay, and what I want to do is start with what's key to having courage is spiritual joy. So I invite you all to dance with me for 3 minutes and get that spiritual joy, get that heart energy going, because a good heart in a big way is key to spiritual courage. So let's all dance together for 3 minutes, and we'll meditate for a minute. Okay, so let's sit quietly for a minute or two and go into meditation. Here we go. Yo. And now in the meditation. Yo. Just slowly come out of meditation. And let's start with a statement by Benjamin Franklin after they had the Declaration of Independence and, in a sense, the Constitution. He basically said, we have a great governmental system that we put together if you can keep it. What he was talking about is we got the morality, we got the ethics, Constitution of the Declaration is based on biblical principles. Everything's in order. But if you can keep it. And that is the issue of courage. It's a courage to live a moral and ethical life. Now, that's quite a statement. Now, recently, we have the example of the symbol of Charlie Kirk showing what people believe is moral courage and living this kind of ethical Christian life. And there are examples of people throughout history that way. We have Joan of Arc, for example. Many great warriors. Abraham, one of the greatest figures in history, constantly having to face moral courage. There was 300 people he defeated, 5 kings. It's like, wow. Okay, so it's a key component to making it work, is being able to have the moral courage to hold and bring the morality to the people. And that is the challenge we face today, is do we, and I'm not just talking putting on President Trump or something, do we have the moral courage as people living in this world, whether U.S. or wherever, to hold to a morals and ethics that holds our politicians and leaders also to a moral and ethical way of being that can bring the greatness to the whole world, the spiritual renaissance to the whole world. That's what we're talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That requires definitely a certain amount of courage to stand with the morals and ethics. Now, one of the things that we look at is, well, how do you decide what's moral, what's ethical? Well, the truth is, depending on what world you live in. So the U.S. Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution, was really based on biblical morality. And so if we hold a standard, 10 speakings, also known as 10 commandments, hold a certain, are the foundation of the biblical reality. Don't kill, don't do this, honor your parents, focus on God, not on idol worship, and on and on. Don't steal, don't murder, okay, don't commit adultery. And so those are basic morals. Takes a lot of courage to live by them and to support other people living in that way. So that's our challenge. I'm going to turn it over to Richard to see what he has to say about it.
Yeah, I think that's good points as always, Gabriel. And I would just point out that if people don't have literacy or don't have a book to look at, it doesn't mean they can't know what's moral and ethical.
Right.
I think that's built into everybody. It's a question of consciousness. And even if they do have some written standard, if they don't have the consciousness to understand it with depth, they'll use it as a justification for all kinds of atrocities. So I think it really comes down to a question of consciousness.
Okay, and because different cultures have different belief systems. We have to be careful about what seems appropriate for them versus what's appropriate for people who are coming out of the Judeo-Christian tradition.
Right. And I'm saying consciousness goes beyond any of those cultures.
Yes and no, because we look at Hamas, we are celebrating the kind of a return of the hostages, but they're dealing with a different moral system. Okay, the Muslim system is not the same. It teaches if you see a Jew behind a rock, kill him. It teaches it's okay to kill anyone who's not a Muslim. So
right. But
that is not the same as Torah teachings.
I agree, but I'm saying that real morality transcends all of those cultures.
Well, yeah. See, I'm saying, it's subtle. Okay, I agree, but who defines real morality? It's very important here. So Dennis Prager was talking about that. He had his first. I don't know if you know who he is, but he had a tragic accident where he became paralyzed, a paraplegic, quadriplegic. He fell coming out of the shower and broke his neck. And he was having his first discussion today. And he was actually talking about the idea of who sets morality. And that's actually his book, the newest book coming out, what he wrote while he was still in the hospital, or translated because he couldn't write, is that who sets the moral standard, and it is relevant. Who decides what's right and wrong? And it isn't as clear because in different cultures you have different viewpoints. And so I'm going to use the standard of the Torah, really the Torah and the New Testament as a kind of a standard for the Western civilization. This is not the same standard that the Muslims use. Now, are they wrong? I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying it's a different standard. So their morality, you're a good person if you kill Jews. They say that. They're overt. Well, that doesn't fit with biblical morality. You see what I'm saying here? So different cultures have really different ideas of morality here.
Right. I'm just pointing out that there is a real morality that transcends them all, and that existed long before any of this stuff was written by either one.
Yeah. And yeah, the problem with that is I hear what you're saying, and it's true in a way. The seven, we call it the sevenfold piece, but there were 7 basic rules that came before the Torah. Okay.
You're saying they were written down somewhere?
Yes. Coming out of Babylon and stuff like that. And they're pretty much the same as what's in the Torah, as the 10 Commandments.
And I'm saying the base real ethics and morals transcend anything that's written. And they don't come from a written code. They come from who we are and where we came.
But who we are writes the written code.
Yeah, but that's imperfect. The real ethics and morals come from who we are and where we came from and the nature of our home. And we get conditioned mentally in one culture or another when we're born into them. But those are superficial.
Well, that's how people live. I can't deny the reality of the Muslims who told it's, the story, real story of a kid right after the October 7th massacre, where he calls home and said, I killed by my bare hands 10 Jews, or by hand 10 Jews. He was ecstatic. His parents were ecstatic. Okay? Good
Right.
Muslim.
That's mental illness.
Well, but that's from your point of view. If you were a Muslim trained in a certain way, you would definitely not see that as mental illness. You would see it as heroic.
That's right.
He's a really good person that needs to be honored.
That's why I don't try to convince anybody of any of this stuff.
Yeah, but you understand what I'm going to say is that's a totally different paradigm. And
I'm
that's
saying everybody came from the same base long before there were any religions.
Well, yes and no. We have Adam and Hava and Seth, and even there was diversion. So
Right. I'm saying before there was a physical plane, morals and ethics existed.
And I'm going to counter by saying the will of God existed. And whatever it was internally was the will of God expressing in all creation.
Right. That's the religious point of view. And
well, that's the real morals and ethics, because the will of God is that. But trouble is, people have different ideas about the will of God. So if you want to kill Jews, and it's right. I can't criticize them for following their religious belief system. I will disagree with that, and they need to be defeated because that's a disaster. Because it's not about Jews, it's about anyone who isn't a Muslim deserves to be killed or made into a slave in some way. That's a moral and ethics I don't agree with. But we're back to this universal truth, and what I'm saying is I'm not sure that people agree on what the universal truth is.
Well, they obviously don't.
Yeah. So what do you do about it? Well,
I think as long as there are religions and belief systems battling each other, it's not going to be peaceful.
What is prophesized is in the 1,000 years of peace, people will have the deeper insight of the oneness. And we go back to people will be more aligned with the will of God, which is perhaps what the 10 speakings were about.
That's the viewpoint of one religion.
Well, Judaic Christian reality, but if you look at the Buddhist, the path, it's not very different. You look at the Hindu path, it's not very different. Slightly different change in language, but the same thing. So they're really not so different. And that's why, and I believe they're not different because ultimately at the deeper level, they all were tuning into the divine will of God and just expressing it slightly different ways. So I believe, like you just said, that we have a universal morality. How people interpret is slightly different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see that clearly. And, when somebody gets born they take a physical body in a certain culture, they get programmed to believe that. And I don't hold that against anybody. I think that's what's going on in the world, and it's no one's fault. But if you were to remove all of that programming, I think what would be left is a universal morality that doesn't depend on anything written whatsoever.
Well, no, it doesn't depend on anything written because what was written came out of the universal reality of alignment with the divine will.
Right, so it doesn't require the written word.
Right. It precedes the written word.
Yes, and consciousness can connect to it. In other words, if you have the consciousness, you can be born into the worst belief system there is, and you won't fall for it.
Yeah, and now you see that in a variety of people breaking away from the Muslim world who realize that they were fed lies and they have broken away. at the risk of their own lives. That's the moral courage I'm talking about.
It gets to a point where you can't afford to go against what you know internally.
Right. And my and to that, not a but, is what gets written down. I wish I could remember the name of the seven no-I principles. So before they had the Torah or anything, the seven no-I principles are from which, I'm going to say, a universal morality was there that was not necessarily written down, but eventually becomes a way of living, and then is surpassed by the 10 speakings.
Do you remember what the 7 principles are?
Well, roughly, there's only God, no idol worship. Honor your parents, honor your mother and father. You shall not murder, should not steal, should not commit adultery, should not envy. I think that's 7.
Sounds a lot like the 10 Commandments.
Yes, absolutely. And that's where the 10 Commandments were drawn from. That's exactly correct. And historically, I think you could back that up. But it came from the 7 no-I principles, which then were expanded to 10.
I think there's a really important element that has to be added to it, and that's that every life form came from the same source, and that for that reason we're all networked together. We're all faces of the same God, and whatever you do to somebody else, you do to yourself.
Yeah, I think it's implicit. What you just said is 100% correct. I think it's implicit in the 7 no-I principles and also the 10 speakings. What you said is implicit. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Exactly, and then there's a reason for that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that comes out of the 10 speakings and the 7 no-I principles. So it's there. Love your neighbor as yourself. Simple way of saying it, and it's accurate. So when he was asked to teach me it all, and when by the time I get onto my horse, it was love your neighbor as yourself. So we're in agreement with this. We're kind of tossing it around, but they are real principles that are inherent to being a human being. Okay? And they're different ways. The 7 no-I principles, the 10 speakings, the Buddhist path, the Taoist path, they all kind of come down to the same places.
Right. And what I'm saying is no matter what culture you may be born into in any particular lifetime, once you get in touch with what's inside of you, you can no longer be controlled by it.
Yeah, but you are it, because they're all based in the same truth.
I know, but being in touch with that truth directly is much better than being dependent on what's written.
Being in touch with that is a result at some level of hearing all the different things of what's written, and then you internalize it.
I don't agree with that, if I understand you, because I think there's a reality inside you that is completely independent of what's written.
Well, I'm going to say the reality inside is what creates what's written.
What's written is an imperfect version, and what's inside is the perfect version.
Well, I would agree with that.
So if you can get directly in touch with what's inside, you don't need what's written, or you understand it better.
Rarely do you get in touch with what's inside. That's why these moral codes are put out.
Right, I'm saying they're not the way to depend on getting in touch with what's inside.
For most of humanity, they are. If you meditate enough, you are able to kind of get it directly.
I'm just saying that's the only path to lasting peace. Not 1,000 years, but permanent.
Yeah, which is
Get directly in touch with what's inside.
Yeah, and that depends, in my opinion, on meditating, because you get the inner truth is amplified.
I totally agree with you. And I think to really have 100% result, that meditation has to become constant.
Yes. There's two kind of meditations. The consciousness meditation where you're living with a good heart, and the other meditation which you're actually sitting in meditation.
Right, but there's another one that when you're walking around the rest of the 24 hours, in the back of your consciousness is always the same element from your meditation. And
well, that's what I just said. That's what I just said.
Yeah. Yes. So when things come up and they're questions and they're not answered directly by what's written, you get your immediate feedback of what to do.
If you're in a pure state. What about the Hamas terrorist who's so happy that he's fulfilled what his religious teacher told him, is kill as many Jews as possible?
They're an example of the people that are not in touch with that meditative state that you just talked about.
Right. I understand that, but I'm trying to say that people get taught all kinds of things if they aren't linked into the inner truth. It's just the religious teachings that they're following causes a lot of problems.
And I agree. And that's why I'm saying that to be safe, no matter what culture you're born into, the final answer is getting in touch with that state you just described.
Yeah.
Then the culture doesn't control you anymore at all.
So I agree with everything you say, but the way it's been talked about through the ages, some of the great, saints talk about getting to a place where you follow it, and then it becomes your natural truth from your inner vision. But getting to the inner vision, you have to do a whole lot of work, and it helps to have these outer things. My concern about your approach is that, realistic. Well, I know what that wants. Well, you don't really, because you're all culturally, contaminated. So that Muslim, he thinks he's totally right. So do his parents, and so does his teacher. Well, I kill all these people. I'm really happy. Okay, but from a Judeo-Christian tradition, from a Confucius point, from a Taoist point, from a Buddhist point, there's a big, they're all in alignment, and they don't support the Muslim point of view. That's what I'm trying to say is that there's a relative thing, and you have to be very, very evolved to get to the direct knowing.
Right, and I'm just saying that the only way for permanent real world peace is going to be for humanity to get to that point.
Yes, and I totally agree. But before you get to that point, you have to have a little bit of riding wheels to keep you going in the right direction.
Right, but during that riding wheel stage, when you don't have agreement, there's all kinds of war and atrocities going on.
Yeah, which is what the world has today. Because being in that stage takes a very evolved person. We don't see a lot of that.
Yeah, and I guess I'm saying that that's the only thing that I see as a desirable state to get to.
It's a very idealistic state. It's desirable, highly desirable, but people need training wheels to head in the right direction, or you just have chaos. I think this is right. I think that's right. I think killing Jews is right. I think killing anyone who isn't a Muslim is right. Wow, it goes on and on. So there need to be kind of training wheels to be able to hold that, to get you going in the right direction. There's a really great Christian saint who made a point that once you get to a certain point, just what you say, and then it's all obvious.
Yeah, you can't go against it because your own spirit will stop you.
And he's saying you have to work up to that point so you're clear enough that you can be at that point.
Right, and I can see the value that religion can play in the training wheels phase.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
To the extent that it's in harmony with the reality.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, it's good. So morality needs spiritual courage to play it out in the world at this point in time. And ultimately, hopefully, we will be blessed enough that we will be able to really attain that in this lifetime of the direct knowing of the truth, rather than having to read about it in a book. Peace be with you. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Richard. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Takiwasana Ho.
Thank you, Gabriel. Great discussion. And I think what it comes down to is, knowing something about where we came from and who we are, transcending any kind of belief system, makes you automatically want harmony and peace in the world. And
Absolutely.
Everybody treating others as versions of themselves because they understand at a deeper level they are. And I think the only way to get to that point is not by debate and trying to convince other people to change, but by being an example ourselves. And so that, in the vision of how it could be, becomes contagious more than any human disease could imagine. And that's our power. We have to activate it. So anyway, thank you for being with us. We're wishing you all total love and peace and harmony in your life, and realize that your power is in your example, and use your time well. We'll see you.
May we be inspired by our life being aligned with the divine will to transform the world.
Right. Massive power is there under the surface. So have a great week, and we'll see you here next time. Take care.
Peace be with you.